Well, hello everyone. My talk today focuses on children with emotional or developmental difficulties. And by that, I mean problems associated with things like worry and fear that may lead to anxiety problems, or low mood that may lead to depression, or things that affect our ability to relate with each other, social and communication difficulties that may be underlined by autism spectrum conditions or other developmental disabilities. So what we're doing here at the University of York is using technology to be able to help these children. And we know that 1 in 9 children aged 5 to 15 years old experience this sort of problems. And as we go along to late teens, if we include 19-year-olds, then the prevalence of these problems becomes 1 to 8. And then in adulthood, the much quoted figure of 1 to 4 people experiencing mental health problems, emotional problems. So you can see a snowballing effect. And one of the ways to stop or at least slow down this snowballing effect is to use clinical interventions at a sufficiently early stage. So we need to recognize symptoms of all sorts of different presenting problems, being able to differentiate the symptoms between clinical problems and those which are sort of a normal variation of emotion and mood. And finally, provide clinically informed interventions such as psychological therapies and behavioral interventions. Now, we cannot do this at the moment for various reasons, mostly 3. Clinical services that have the expertise do not have the capacity. Non-clinical services, schools, when we're talking about children, charities, social care, do not have the clinical expertise. And finally, children and parents, families do not know what to look out for and what help is available out there. So by using technology, we can sort of crystallize the knowledge of clinicians, convert this into digital therapies, and then help enable those who are not clinicians to support them and deliver them, and also children and their families to use them autonomously. So we have 2 types of these technologies developed or in development here at the University of York. One is a digital game, or a series of games to help children have fear-latent conditions. And the other one is a mixed reality system to help children who have social and communication difficulties. So, and to introduce these 2 technologies, I'll just ask Alex and Chris to come to the podium. So,
Project Dig For It. Dig For It stands for Digital Intervention Games for Implementing Therapy, and it is designed to help children overcome their phobias and fears. It has 4 parts. It's got the Fear Lab, the Face-Off, and the Fact File. And these all include exposure therapy. And finally, on the top left, we have the Mind Palace, and that's the reward section. So every time the child completes a section of the Fear Lab, Face-Off, or Fear Files, they unlock a room in the Mind Palace. Now, I'll hand over to Chris.
oh, sorry.
I See Me Do. The technology uses video capture to catch your image and project it onto the screen. When you see yourself on the screen, you interact with people, and these are actors acting and being filmed for the specific scenario. And the technology aims to help children improve their social and communication skills if they have troubles in this area. For example, using the right language for different people, being able to take turns in conversations, and understanding people's emotions. Now I'll pass back to Lina.
So you can actually see these 2 technologies in action. We've got a little demo in the room as you go out. So we are in the process of developing this at the moment. So that's what I'm going to focus on co-production and co-delivery, and how we included our various partners and beneficiaries in that. So there are really sort of 6 key stakeholders or partners involved in the co-production of this. The public, and by that I mean the children and the families who use services, or just in the general public, anyone who is really interested in children's mental health. And we held here at the university a series of training workshops, seminars, where we had lots of children coming in and they looked at resources, whether they were self-help groups or digital aids that existed out there, and then teasing out the components that they found the most helpful. Then we have, of course, academics, researchers who need to design how to evaluate these technologies. And the industry. By industry, I mean two really key partners. They're those who we commission to actually construct the technology, and those who provide psychological therapy services that they're going to add the human factor on the technologies. So, and the process is really a process of translation. You have to translate clinical principles and techniques into gaming activities, gaming scenarios, or the film scenarios that we use in the virtual reality system. So once we do this translation, then we have the product, and then we do the opposite translation. So we have the end product, which is the mixed reality system or the game, and then we have to develop protocols as to how to use this in therapy in a blended model. And the sort of agencies and partners who are going to roll this out and support it is, of course, schools, the NHS, and charities. The NHS has the clinical expertise, but they don't have capacity, as I already mentioned. And schools and charities also stretch for capacity and resources. But, of course, the biggest barrier is they don't have the clinical skills. And the core business is not really to treat children who have clinical conditions. So we use technology to be able to, we have to work with these partners to see how can we fit this technology within their existing working practices to enable children and families to access clinically informed interventions, but also those who are not used to dealing with children's emotional or developmental problems in a clinical capacity, how they're able to support that. So this is really part of the model that we use to be able to develop the technologies. But it wasn't without the challenges. I mean, and I sort of teased out two of the key challenges here. Is that we all work towards this common goal of really supporting children's mental health, but we go about it in different ways, and we all have different needs, and all these different ages that have different needs and different priorities. So if we go back into the beneficiaries, of course, the public, children and families, what they want is a solution that is readily available, is free to access, and it's effective. And they don't want to wait, really. They just want something that is out there. And industry wants to always be ahead of the curve and, of course, to generate income to make money. Whereas academia is a bit slower. We want to really develop one bit of technology, then really evaluate it to death with randomized controlled trials, and then write, reports and papers, by which time, of course, technology moved on miles of lights of years ahead. And then schools, charities, and the NHS, they have their own working practices. They don't usually communicate with each other, sort of, if there are different problems, they signpost. So these are some of the challenges that sort of led to square pegs and round holes. So, as a case in point, with a game, we thought the industry told us that we need a game that reaches out to as many children as possible across a range of difficult conditions, because that would be appealing. So we want to capture children from 5 to 18, 19 years old. We want to capture children who have phobias, but also depression or generalized anxiety. And also have a platform of different games, not 1 or 2 or 5 games, but different games that present problem-specific interventions. Actually, the NHS and the charities that we work with and the social care schools, they're happy with that because they say, we never really see children with one problem, we want something that cuts across. But of course, academia steps in and said, no, we need to have one specific age group and one specific problem, and then do proof of concept, then feasibility, then randomized controlled trials. So you can see where I'm coming from in terms of square pegs and round holes. And also, I mean, we can see in terms of impact, I thought, it's quite obvious that down the line, when we develop the technologies and we are able to go into the schools who will use them, into charities, and by charities, I mean the NSPCC, Barnardo's, even libraries that they run sort of mental well-being programs. We're able to go there and we increase reach, adoption. Of course, we're working towards improving children's mental health. But I thought, is there something really we can do in terms of what do children, young people, families, all these people, the industry, what do they get out of it during this co-production, co-translational process? So I'm wondering whether I ask Alex and Chris have been sort of involved in the development. What did you get out of it when we're talking about, when we're developing the game?
Well, I've learned what it takes to make a game and all the different roles, so like developer, designer, tester, and yeah.
And I have understood how to use graded exposure therapy in a game.
Excellent, excellent, very well versed. Thank you very much. Thank you. So really the point I'm trying, oh sorry, the point I was trying to make is two things really, in terms of what we've learned from this process, is science communication. And academics, we are really, bless us, quite bad at that, because we do produce reams and reams and reams of data and information. And if you're able to explain to 12-year-olds really, who may be a bit, attention deficit, a bit socially anxious, a bit, mood fluctuation, if you're able to explain to them what's exposure therapy, health economics, then you've cracked science communication. And I think this is really the key thing. How can we use innovative ways to explain, to put our principles, our techniques, our knowledge across, and then that's the only way really where we can achieve true co-production. And the other sort of point I'm trying to make with the cartoon, this is from SpongeBob SquarePants, if you don't know. One of the other things that researchers do, typically, of course, we invite people into our university. It says Bikini Bottom University and Bikini Bottom School over there, which is SpongeBob SquarePants sort of natural habitat. So we're very good. As a university, we pride ourselves in enabling our partners, collaborators, and beneficiaries to gain new knowledge and skills and insights, whether it is mental health, psychological therapies, or anything else. And we invite people to do this, and we train them, and we sort of present our research. And occasionally, we step into their worlds, but we do so as observers, as superiors. We sort of go there to collect data. But what I found, to genuinely produce something that then can have impact, we need to step into their world as active participants. We need to understand them. And the only way to do this is really stepping into their world as sort of active members as opposed as observers, even if this world is called Bikini Bottom School. So I shall stop here and thank everyone.